Hey guys, it's Nina and today I'm going to be showing you all the books that I've read somewhat recently. It's complicated, but basically I haven't done a wrap-up since March, and it is currently October, so today I'm gonna go through all the books that I've read since about April to August. I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like I can't wrap up recent books unless I go back and wrap up those books that I read earlier in the year, and also I do want to talk about them, so I'm just gonna make a giant backlogged wrap-up video today, and then we'll go back to the regular wrap-up schedule for the fall. Hopefully. I shouldn't say the regular schedule, a more normal schedule. That will be the goal. But anyway, this video is going to be insanely long, so let's get started. The first book that I'm going to be talking about is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and this was our Biblio Squad book pick of the month for some month, probably April, maybe even March, to be honest. And the Biblio Squad is a book club that I help run with Grace over at G Swizzle Books, Kathleen over at For the Love of Books, and Jules over at Jules Reads. They're all lovely, and I will link all their channels down below. You should totally join. All the information will be down below. But I actually don't have too much to say about Strange the Dreamer. We have an entire live show discussing all our spoilery thoughts, but basically it's a high fantasy, it's really whimsical, really beautiful writing. Oh my god, that's probably what I need to talk about the most. Everyone says that Laini Taylor has beautiful writing, but oh my god, you guys, her writing is beautiful. You have to read at least one Laini Taylor book just to experience it, because it's just so poetic and I love it. But overall, yeah, this was a high fantasy, totally worth the read, and you've probably heard lots of hype on it by now because again, it came out in April. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is City of Saints and Thieves by Natalie C. Anderson. I had mixed feelings on this book. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and it just I liked the concept and I really did like some things about this book, but I just don't think it was fully executed as well as I wanted it to be. I think one of my biggest issues with this book is that it's marketed as a thriller, but it's really more on the mystery side of things because it's not fast-paced at all. Not too much happens until the big climax in terms of a thriller sense. But this book follows our main character who is living in Kenya, and she is a refugee from the Congo. She came from the Congo about 10 years ago with her mother, and then 5 years ago her mother was murdered. So the whole story is her trying to prove that this one particular man murdered her mother. And this book, there were certain aspects that I really liked. Again, the pacing and stuff I didn't so much like, but my favorite part by far was the setting of this book because I think it taught me so much. I mean, there are just things that you learn from fiction that you don't necessarily learn in history class or so. For example, the main character is a refugee from the Congo, and I'm aware that there has been violence in the Congo and is still somewhat ongoing to this day, but reading a story that takes place in that area and seeing them go past checkpoints and have to bribe people and seeing the history of that violence through a fictional story, I think was really educational for me. So this is one of those books where on the one hand I didn't love it, I also really appreciated it, and I'm really glad that I read it, and I wish I would read more books like this because it really taught me a lot. And I think that's important. Next up is a book that I'm not going to talk about too much, and that is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. This is of course the third book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy, and I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book, but it was nowhere near as good as Akamath. How could it be? And this was another Biblio Squad book, so I have a full live show of spoilery thoughts down in the description if you'd like to check that out. The next book that I have is another tougher topic, and that is George by Alex Gino, and this book is about a transgender kid. The main character, George, wants to play Charlotte in Charlotte's Web, but she is a he on the outside. I can't remember what the exact age is, but George is in elementary school. They don't even know what is going on and all of that. And this is definitely a middle grade book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I felt really weird rating this because it wasn't the best read I've ever had, but it's such an important book. And again, I learned so much from this because transgender issues is something that I don't know as much about compared to other LGBTQ issues. So I thought it was really good again for me to read this, and also since it's a middle grade book, everything is broken down in a way that really young readers should be able to understand, and I found that really helpful. So I took off a star because it wasn't the most well written thing that I ever read, and like there were some really slow parts, but on the other hand this book is like so important that I feel weird taking off stars. So that's like an inner struggle that I'm having. But anyway, this is a really incredible book, and if you've never read a book about a transgender main character, like you should read one at some point. But this is definitely a good place to start, and I really want to read some other ones now because this is an issue that, again, I feel like I should know more about than like I currently do. The next book that I read this summer was a reread, and that was Illuminate by Jake Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, and this was just fantastic, you guys. Like, I love this series. I think the first time around I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but this time it was a 5 out of 5. I loved it. Again, the first time I read this, I read it like as a physical book, but this summer I listened to it as an audiobook, and like, this audiobook is really hyped up, but like, guys, it's so good. It is 100% worth the hype. Like, it is such a different experience reading this book versus listening to it. Firstly, because the book has such a cool format, like that alternate format, not really told in the way that most novels are. But then also the audiobook has a full cast of characters. So like, there's someone who plays Ezra, there's someone who plays Katie, there are background people, like the guy who does the video commentary, like there's one voice actor for that, and he's different from like the sergeant, and like all these different characters have their own voice actors, and that just made it so much more immersive. Like, I just enjoyed it so much more the second time, and I know part of that is because I'm rereading a story that I already know I love, but most of it I think was just like the amazingness of the audiobook. So if you've never read Illuminate, I definitely recommend reading the physical book the first time because I think it just makes more sense and it's like something you should experience. But if you've already read it, like, listen to the audiobook. It's a completely new experience. You have to do it. 10 out of 10 stars, totally recommend. I need to listen to Gemina now. Like, I need to know what it is like because I assume it's like the same thing and just amazing. Then the next book that I read was Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh, and I did not like this book very much. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Only looking back, I would probably give it like a 2. This book just like completely fell flat for me. Like, there were some parts that I did enjoy, but like overall just missed the mark. I think part of the reason why I didn't like this book is because it was marketed, to me at least, I don't know if this was the publishing company or just like booktube hype, but it was marketed to me as a Mulan retelling, and this book is just like nothing like Mulan at all. This book is about an Asian girl who pretends to be a boy, and that's pretty much where the similarities end. Like, this is closer to Robin Hood than it is to Mulan. And it just really bothers me that it's being marketed as a Mulan retelling because, like, there are so many other stories out there that are about girls who dress up as boys that, like, are about white people and not marketed as Mulan. So, like, I did not see the comparison. But also this book was just full of a lot of tropes and, like, cliches and things that, like, Renee Ahdieh was totally shooting for but, like, missed the mark, and yeah, there's a full live show up about this because this was also a Biblio Squad book pick of the month, so that will be linked down below and you can have all my full spoilery rants about it because it was a really weird live show because half of us really enjoyed it and half of us did not like this book, so a very entertaining live show. Then the next book that I have is the only physical book that I have with me at college, and that is The Trials of Apollo, Book 2, The Dark Prophecy by Rick Riordan, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this book a lot more than the first one. I think the characters were just more well developed. Like, Apollo is going through so much more character development in this one, and I just think that made the book so much better. And the side characters were great, the plot was better. I just overall enjoyed this one a lot more than the first one. And then the next book that I read was The Crown's Fate by Evelyn Skye. This is the second and final book in the Crown's Game duology. I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is the same rating that I gave the first one. And again, this is a Biblio Squad book pick, so I have a full live show down below with all of my spoilery thoughts. But basically, I really enjoyed this book. I liked it a little bit less than the first one, but overall it was a really solid finish to this duology, and it's a duology that I overall really enjoyed. So, highly recommend. Moving on to the next book because this video is so long. The next book that I also read as an audiobook was Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda, and this is another one that I was like absolutely blown away with. I have said this many times on this channel and I will say it again, I am not a contemporary person. I usually don't like realistic fiction, but this book, I have not liked a contemporary this much in so long. Like, 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. And I know everyone like loves this book and thinks it's so cute, and like I can see why, because this book, I was like listening to it on the metro and like smiling like an idiot because it was just so adorable and just so cute. I loved it. I will say my only real critique of it is that I did figure out who Blue was pretty early on, but other than that, this book was just fantastic. And they're making a movie for it, and let me just say, I am very happy with who they chose for Blue. That's all I can say because that's spoilers, but I am in love with the actor that they chose for him. So the hype is real for this movie. The next book that I have is actually a graphic novel, one of the very few graphic novels that I read this year, and that is Elias Volume 1, which is the first Jessica Jones graphic novel, and this I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It was good. It was just a solid graphic novel. I don't have too much to say about it. I guess going in, my expectations were really high because I was obsessed with the Jessica Jones TV show, like loved it. So I was expecting really great things from this, but it ended up being just like a solid, averagely good graphic novel. So if you're a fan of Jessica Jones, I would recommend reading it, but don't expect to be blown away by it. And then the one other graphic novel that I read was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, and this again I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Don't have too much to say about it. Like, it was a solid, good graphic novel, but like nothing that blew me away. And I do want to read more in this series because Guardians of the Galaxy, but I was expecting a little bit more. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I finally got to it, you guys. But as you may know, I am somewhat obsessed with the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo, which takes place in the same universe as the Grisha trilogy, which I have never read. But I finally got to the first Grisha book, and it was really good. Like, it was nowhere near as good as Six of Crows, but I liked seeing the comparisons. I liked seeing that world again. Like, it was almost like coming home to that world because I loved the Six of Crows duology so much. And this book was really weird because it was kind of the opposite of Flame in the Mist, where there were so many tropes, so many predictable things, and the characters were also very tropey, but they were done so well that I almost didn't care. Like, it was such typical YA trash predictability, just like all the tropes that you could have in YA. This book is it, but it does them so well that I didn't mind, and I actually really enjoyed it. I can't tell if that's like a backhanded compliment or not, but it was just like a nice quick YA read, and it was like exactly what I needed, and I'm really looking forward to reading the other two in the trilogy. And that is it. Those are the 12 books that I read from April to August-ish. I have some other books that I've also finished since then, but I'm going to hold those till my next wrap-up, so I actually like have a wrap-up. And that is it. Let me know down below what you guys have been reading recently, or any of your thoughts on any of these books. And that is it. I will see you guys later with another video soon. Bye!